Hi, this is my pre-state of Seattle address. My state of Seattle weekly address. Yes, because I am dealing with the state that Seattle is in. I'm not talking about the state of Washington, but the state of disrepair that Seattle is in. Now, I wrote a letter to Councilwoman Herbold, and I got a reply back. The typical reply that politicians give you. She didn't write anything personal. She didn't give any personal opinions. She didn't say how she personally feels on anything. She just wrote the standard, typical, get you out of my hair kind of responses. This is a letter that I wrote to her. Dear Councilwoman Herbold, thank you for taking my reply. Thank you for your reply to my letter. Oh, I am getting ahead of myself here. Let me back up. This is the letter I wrote to her first. Then I will get to the responses and my response back to her. Dear Councilwoman Herbold, I accidentally forgot to capitalize the H in Herbold, so she might have got a little upset with that. I hope not. I hope she figured out that it was just a mistake, that I was doing my cell phone when I wrote her and not my house. Dear Councilwoman Herbold, thank you for taking the time to read my email message to you and for also taking the time to answer some of my concerns. I noticed that you are on the Housing Committee and was just curious, does Seattle have a rent cap in place to help protect renters of Seattle, and if not, why? Also, does the citizens of Seattle have a renters union to help them fight against the mafia don landlords? Also, what is being done to fix the homeless problem? Not help the homeless become more comfortable being homeless, but to cut the problem down to a more workable size. When people realize that they are not able to continue doing what they're doing, and they know that for a fact, it's just not lip service where they think, oh, that's just what they're saying, I can keep on doing what I'm doing and no big deal. Like where I live at right now, you're not supposed to drink in the apartment buildings where I live at. It's a dry apartment building for recovering addicts. I'm not an addict. I've never drank. I don't care for the taste of alcohol, so therefore I never found anything I liked. But there's people here that have been alcoholics and are alcoholics, and they tell the landlord, I haven't drank, it's been almost 9 months, I don't plan on drinking. Then as soon as they get okayed for the apartment and they move in, they skedaddle to the liquor store, buy some alcohol, and they start drinking. Because they think they can get away with it, and they think that the landlord's not really going to put their foot down. But if the landlord finds out that you're drinking, they will boot you out within 24 hours. I know this because there's been several people that I have come in contact with in my building that have been booted out for drinking and having alcohol. One guy's friend had brought alcohol and it was in his trunk, and we have security in our building from time to time that do checkups, and the security was helping him get something out of his trunk, a walker or part of a wheelchair, electric scooter or something. Anyway, security was helping him bring that out so we could take it upstairs. There was alcohol in the trunk. There was a couple of cases of alcohol. He had not planned on bringing it into the building. He had planned on taking it somewhere else, but there is no alcohol on the property. Security saw it and they were forced to report it, which is what they did, and the tenant ended up losing his apartment over it. Now, he appealed that and talked to management, and management allowed him to move back on a trial basis, but he had to go through the whole thing again, sign up, and to get back in. Okay, here it says, just curious, and also, does citizens of Seattle have a renters union to help them fight against the mafia don landlords? I'm not talking about that Washington State union for renters where a bunch of yuppies and do-good hipsters and hippies have started up a program to where they want to try to help you, and they've had absolutely they've had no experience with being homeless. They've had no experience getting out of homeless. They have had no experience with having a hard time finding an apartment because the rent is too high. They're just a group of people, and in theory, they mean well, but I'm talking about a city union. Seattle's tenants union, I'll get into that in a little bit, but this is what I wrote her. Okay, not to help the homeless become homeless down to size, workable size. I was homeless for about 10 years, so I understand the issues of being homeless. Yes, I am thinking of running for mayor in 2021, and I'm thinking of running. To fix these problems that Seattle was allowed to get out of control. These problems that should have been dealt with back 15 years ago when it really started to get out of hand. Actually, everything started to get out of hand back when the Fraser Crane TV show came online and became extremely popular, and Microsoft took off, and everybody saw Microsoft and they saw Seattle. They saw the fake Seattle in the Fraser Crane show, and they assumed that's the way Seattle was, and they wanted to move there because it looked cool. Cafe Nervosa, KCAL, the radio station Fraser supposedly worked at. You had Elliott Bay Towers on the counterbalance. They saw how spacious and how large the apartment looked and the condo. They saw the view off of his terrace. That crap never really appears anywhere in Seattle. You don't see that view nowhere. Now, there's a lot of landlords that thought, or a lot of people that built these apartments that thought, we can try to replicate that and we can make tons of money out of it. Now, it says here, I want to stop these problems before it becomes impossible to stop it, and Seattle implodes in on itself. Eventually, it's going to be like a huge bubble. The rent is going to get so high that people, no matter what they make, they will not be able to live in Seattle, and everybody will move out, and Seattle will become a ghost town like Detroit with a lot of buildings. And because the state has stopped Seattle from doing a rent cap and doing rent restrictions, Seattle will no longer be livable pretty soon. Microsoft will dry up because people will have to move so far away from Microsoft that they can't afford to come into work every day. I love Seattle and want Seattle to be all it can be. Cost of living has come down. Cost of living has to come down. That's what I meant to say. The cost of living has to come down. It does. It has to come down. Like way down here. Instead of way up here, like it is now. It needs to come down. Down a few notches. You need to come down and be with the regular folks. That's where the cost of living needs to be at. You know, that low, comfortable, deep voice. The cost of living needs to be down in that area. Rent has to come down. Luxury apartments can stay that way. If you want to pay $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 for a luxury apartment and you can actually realistically afford that, like you're making like 200 grand a year. If you're making 200 grand a year and your rent is say $3,000 a month, you probably can afford that. But your lifestyle is probably really spendy. You probably buy $10,000 Rolexes at the drop of a hat. You probably eat Wagyu steak, which costs about $400. Yeah, you probably do. The rest of Seattle can't do that Because we don't have the money. And for sure, we need to stop the homelessness problem. This is what I wrote her. There are people moving to Seattle just to be homeless. If you had a house and you had bugs, would you make the bugs feel more at home? What if other bugs were attracted to your house and moved in because they knew how hospitable you were and how you fed the bugs in your house? And the bugs were eating nice and happy, and they had loads of places to sleep and lots of free food, and other bugs found out and they moved to your house. Would you allow that to happen? Or would you call in an expert to fix the problem? Stop talking and start doing. I am looking forward to your response to my email. Please have a pleasant day. Timothy Jenkins, a very concerned citizen. That's what I wrote her. And yes, that is my name, Timothy Jenkins. Now, I'm telling you that because I use Pauper's Budget for a couple of reasons. One, I have a Facebook page called Pauper's Budget where I put recipes. I'm a firm believer that a person doesn't have to spend $80 on lobster or on seafood or steak or pastas. They don't have to spend a lot of money to have the same quality of food. I believe that if you know how to shop and you know where to shop, you can find recipes that are cheaper to where you can have a fine dining experience on a very low budget. Fine Dining on a Pauper's Budget is the name of that Facebook page. It's called Pauper's Budget. I use that for my YouTube because I believe that paupers have a budget and they should be able to find what they're looking for within that budget. Now, this is what Lisa Herbold, or Councilwoman Herbold wrote me. Dear Mr. Jenkins, here are the answers to your questions. Does Seattle have a rent cap in place to help protect the renters of Seattle, and if not, why? Now, I'm going to read you something that I got when I looked up why Seattle does not have a rent cap, nor are they able to have a rent cap, nor since 2015, as I understand it, has anybody ever challenged the state on this. I want to get this fixed. If I can't get it fixed, I plan on suing the state of Washington. I plan on suing the shit out of the state of Washington for breaching the citizens of the state of Washington's inalienable rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. Now, this is RCW 35.31.830. Controls on rent for residential structures prohibited. And then there's exceptions to that. The impositions of the controls on rent, is of statewide significance. Now, who is it impositioning? See, the state wants you to think that it's an imposition because it would require more of the city to enforce the regulations. But, in actuality, it's an imposition for the landlords, it's an imposition for the developers, and for the foreign investors, who I like to call the Mafia Don landlords. It's in positioning them. Because if you can get $3,000 for a raggedy, rugged, worn-down apartment, why would you want the city regulating you to $500 a month or $600 a month? Why would you want that? You wouldn't. So you got into cahoots with the state, and the state passed a law. The state of Washington passed a law, and the economy went from way down here, where it's nice and calm and comfortable, to way up here, where it's very congested and very difficult to deal with. It says here that the impositions of controls on rent is a statewide significance and is preempted by the state, which means that the state has taken away the cities and towns' ability for the citizens to protect themselves against the landlords. You guys are getting raped and raked over the coals every single day. The state is allowing the mafia, don, landlords to bend you over a table and fuck you up the keister every day. And there's nothing you can do about it. And the cities have quit trying to do anything. They have just gone with the flow because they don't want to rock the boat. I'm planning on running for mayor of Seattle in 2021, and I am just stupid enough and just dumb enough and just bold enough to not be scared of the state and the mafia don landlords. I'm going to fight for the citizens of Seattle. I want to bring the cost of living down. I want to bring the rent down. I want to bring the homeless problem down. I want it to be down here, where it's nice and comfortable, where everybody can enjoy a better quality of life. And I don't want their liberties to be strangled to death. And I want them to be able to pursue their happiness. And they can't do it if the state brings everybody back up here. See what I mean? Now, no city or town or any class may enact, maintain, or enforce ordinances or other provisions which regulate the amount of rent to be charged for single, family, or multiple unit rentals, rental structures, or sites other than properties in public ownership. Under the public management or properties providing low-income rental housing under joint public-private agreements. That means that if an apartment works out a deal with the city to keep the rent lower, they will do that. But as you can tell, Seattle, there is hardly any of the rentals in Seattle for, like, say, the last 15 years that are willing to do that because they don't have to. You guys can take us and bend us over the table and fuck us up the keister without lubrication. And you don't even have to take us out to dinner first. You just fuck us really hard. And I want to put a stop to that shit. Now, I'm sorry if my language offends people, but I'm a plain, everyday guy. I don't do a lot of legalistic mumbo-jumbo. I don't believe in politics, period. I don't like talking politics. I don't like politics. I'm not here to stroke a political ego. I'm not here to try to become governor unless becoming governor is the only way to fix the problem of the rental problem and the homeless problem of Washington. Then I would consider it. I don't plan on running for President of the United States. I don't. I plan on becoming the mayor of Seattle so I can help you guys. I can help us have a better quality of life while we enjoy our liberties and pursue our happiness, which are inalienable rights guaranteed to us and protected by the Constitution of the United States. All the other rights that we have stem from those three: right to life, to liberty, and pursuit of happiness. It says we can pursue happiness. It never says we'll be able to obtain it, but we can pursue it all we want. Once in a while, we'll find happiness. And that's not the bird of paradise, I tell you. So, back to this. This section shall not be construed as prohibiting any city or town from entering into agreements with private persons which regulate or control the amount of rent to be charged for rental properties. Now, as mayor of Seattle, if I cannot get this a rent cap done, I will go personally to apartment buildings, to apartment owners. I will go personally to apartment owners and see what I would need to do to get them to lower the rent so freaking low that it would put a spin on everybody's head. Yeah. Now, this is Washington laws passed in 1981. 1981! 91, 2001, 2011. That's 11, 18. That's 17 years ago. No, I'm sorry, 37. 37 long years ago. 37. What the hell? It says here that, let's see here. Chapter 75 substitutes House Bill number substitutes House Bill number 264. Rent controls and state preemptions. Yeah, my reading is a little off because I need glasses better, and also my speech is a little off, but you get what I'm saying. Rent controls and state preemptions. An act relating to rent control, adding a new section to Chapter 35.21 RCW, adding a new section to Chapter 36.01 RCW and creating a new section. Now, an act regulating rent control, be it enacted by the legislature of the state of Washington. Now, I want to know if the state of Washington put this to a vote. Did they ask you to vote on this? Did they say, let the citizens of the state decide whether or not we should okay this, or did they just do it? I think they just did it, and I think they just fucked everybody. Be it enacted by the legislature of the state of Washington, new section, section 1, there is added to Chapter 35.21 RCW a new section to read as follows. The imposition of controls on rent is a statewide significance and is preempted by the state. The state has stopped it. No city or town or any class may enact, maintain, or enforce ordinances or any provisions which regulate the amount of rent to be charged for single families or multiple rent units, residential rental structures, or sites other than properties in public ownerships under public managements, or priorities providing low-income rental housing under joint public-private agreements for the financing of provisions of such low-income rentals. This section shall not be construed as prohibiting any city or town from entering into agreements with private persons which regulate or control the amounts of rent to be charged for rental properties. Now, the state has stopped the city from forcing a rent control, but they haven't stopped the renters with good conscience and good hearts that care about the citizens of the city. The state hasn't stopped them from restricting their own rent. If you're told that you're not going to get a ticket for speeding, and you're not going to get a ticket, and the police aren't going to stop you from doing anything in the city, they just want you to use your good common sense, and they take your word as a gentleman and a woman, and a gentlewoman, that you will obey all of the ordinances at all times, and the police don't have to do nothing. Do you honestly believe that everybody is going to follow the ordinances to the letter of the law? That they're going to follow the letter of the ordinances to the letter of the law on their goodwill? No! People ain't going to do that. It's human nature to want to fuck people over. Sometimes. Now, my thing here is this, rental properties. New section, there's added to chapter, a new section to, it's 36.01 RCW a new section to read as follows. The imposition of controls on rent is a statewide significance. It is preempted. Okay, this is section 2. Okay, here. For the financing of provisions of such low-income rental housing. Okay. For no country or any class or may enact, maintain, or enforce ordinances or any provisions which regulate the amount of rent to be charged for single families or multiple unit residential rental structures or sites other than properties in public ownerships under public managements or properties providing low-income rental housing under joint public-private agreements for the financing or provisions of such low-income rental housing. This section shall not be construed as prohibiting any country or any county from entering into agreements with private persons which regulate. Okay, now, nothing in this, it says new section, section 3, nothing in this act shall be construed to preempt local ordinances that relate to the control of rents or other rental or other relationships at floating home moorage sites, which means housing. You know, houseboats. Yeah, houseboats are not affected by this because they're not stable structure. They're not in the ground. You can pick up a houseboat and float it down the river somewhere. New section 4. If any provision of this act or its applications to any persons or circumstances is held invalid, the remainder of this act or the application of the provisions to any persons or circumstances is not affected. They write these so you can't understand them. Here I am trying to read it and I can't understand it. I need to get somebody that can put this in simple language, and as soon as I'm able, I will read it back to you. You can have my promise on that. I'm going to get going because I'm almost done here with this video. Put your comments down at the bottom. Tomorrow night, Friday, I will put a State of Seattle address to explain the things that the city's been working on, the new tax that they want to put onto the small businesses, and how it's going to affect the city of Seattle. Stay tuned for that. This has been All Things Considered because I consider all things.